Good evening, race fans, and welcome to Podium Esports coverage of the fifth race of the first round for the 2021 eNASCAR Road to Pro Qualifying iRacing Series. Live from iRacing's virtual Darlington Raceway in Darlington, South Carolina. James Pike, the voice of Podium Esports, alongside Evan Pasoko, Josh Lee, Jeff McConey, our pit reporter Justin Prince, and our producer for the evening Ryan Bauer, with cameras provided to us this evening by Dougie B. A big night, a big week for Darlington Raceway here in the sim. We've seen the stars of the eNASCAR Pro Invitational iRacing Series take to this track with the next-gen cars for the first time ever, which iRacing released to the full membership last night as well. We've got that car available in sim a solid, almost 9 months before we actually see them in real life, and now we get to see those trying to fight their way up the ladder into next year's eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series take to this track with the vehicles of the NASCAR Camping World Truck Series to try and see if they can fight their way up ever closer to the top level of sim racing competition and presumably compete in those next-gen cars next year. So plenty of storylines to follow, and by the way, Evan, we also have a few throwbacks that we'll see as well, because it is throwback week after all, not only in real life but also in the sim.
Yeah, I don't know what I'm more excited for, to be honest, James. The fact that we're racing at Darlington, or the fact that we're going to have some pretty awesome throwbacks on the truck this year, right? You talk about it being throwback weekend this upcoming week. That's normally a NASCAR Cup Series, a NASCAR Xfinity Series thing, right? So it's so cool that the trucks are in on it this year, and in turn, here with the eNASCAR Road to Pro Qualifying iRacing Series doing so. But to the point that we made the last time we were on the air here on a Thursday night, we are starting to get deep into this first round. Darlington is a tricky track, and I think tonight we could have some pretty consequential moments in terms of those drivers fighting for the top spots, or even just the top 70 in the championship. So don't let the glitz and glam but the paint schemes get us off track too much. We'll enjoy them, but these drivers have a serious work ahead of them.
Because, Josh Lee, we've already progressed into the second half of this first round. Remember, when we get to Dover next month, we're cutting the points, and it's only the top 70 that will progress into the summer months and have a chance to compete and be one of the final 20 that make it from this series into the eNASCAR Road to Pro Contender iRacing Series that will be run in the fall.
And it becomes even more intense once those points are cut. We are going to go from over 1,000 hopeful eNASCAR contenders down to 70, like you mentioned, James Pike, after Dover. And then from there, it's two splits of 35, and the top 20 from that will move into the contender series. So we're just going to continue to chip away at the drivers that we have trying to make it into the eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series. And oh, by the way, when we get into the winter in the contender series, we're going to cut even more from there, as only the top 20 from that make it into the big series and the biggest eNASCAR series that there is.
And regardless of whether or not it's the next-gen car, the current-gen car, this truck that we're racing tonight, Jeff McConey, this is a really tricky place to get around, because the actual racing line is so narrow, and for a track that's just over a mile in length, I've always felt like Darlington races incredibly fast. You have a greater sense of speed here relative to the track size compared to just about every other circuit that we see on the schedule.
And it really is like that. I mean, I was racing the next gen last night as well. I think everybody here was, once it was released in the rookie and the Class A, and it really is such a fast track. You're almost flat out going through turns 1 and 2, just a little bit of a tap of the brake heading into turn 3. And Jeff McConey can talk about really what the changes are on the trucks in terms of setup wise to get through that, because both of the entire corners on each of the end are completely different. Very little similarities in the two ends of this racetrack, and very little similarities in this racetrack to any other track that will race here in eNASCAR.
Lots of things that we're going to find out, Jeff McConey. Going to be interesting to see how tire wear compounds over the course of this race. We know how hard this track is on tires and fuel as well.
It absolutely is. This track is a very difficult course to get around, and when you're driving it, it's pretty much the epitome of diamonding a corner. You enter low, then you get it right up as close to the wall as you can get it, and then you drive it back down off the wall to the bottom of the track before finally at corner exit getting it right out to the wall. Here's the thing though, the reason they call this place the Lady in Black is not for any sort of a joking reason. It is a very difficult place to get around. You touch that wall, it'll grab you, she'll pull you right in, and make sure you don't get off that wall.
Let's take a look at this track from above and see where we are in the world, courtesy of our friends at Google Earth. You'll find that when we look at the map and see things that we're actually not terribly far away from the North Carolina-South Carolina border and in that famed Sandhills region that was home to Rockingham Speedway as well. As we get into the map, you start digging in here. We're sort of in the Petey River Valley and near one of the fantastic state roads of the Palmetto State and near one of the oldest tracks in NASCAR and the first proper super speedway that this place had. This sport had. This place opened in 1950 in a track that is just over a mile in length, 1.366 miles, 2.198 kilometers. We've got 25 degrees of banking in 1 and 2, 23 in turns 3 and 4, 3 degrees of banking on the front stretch, and 2 degrees of banking on the back stretch, which were flipped in 1997. They built the new stands that you see towards the bottom of your screen and made that the front straightaway instead of the old front stretch, which is our current back stretch, which is nestled right up along that state road that you see there. So plenty of work and plenty of transformations that this track has gone throughout the years. But in either case, we're going to see 140 laps, 191 miles, 307 kilometers tonight in this fifth round of the eNASCAR Road to Pro qualifying iRacing Series. 55 to 60 laps your fuel window, 5 sets of tires available to our drivers in the pits, and 3 green-white checker attempts. As we get set for this race, it is time to take you to the starting grid and tell you where your favorite driver will begin their race tonight. Anthony Burrows with the fast time at 29.206 to take the top spot over Brandon McKissick, Donovan Strauss, and Tucker Minter making up that second row. Justin Bolton, Blake Neer, all drivers who've not won yet, Evan, in this 2021 campaign, but have shown speed throughout the first few races.
Yeah, they've got a good starting spot here this evening. Back on row 4, Jeremy Allen going to start alongside Drew Faridaj. And they got a duo of Brian LaPrade and Dylan Alt. They'll make up positions number 9 and 10, just ahead of Cody Bias in 11th, and Parker Retzlaff, P12.
Brian Mercurio, Colin Keister share row 7. Keister is your winner from Richmond a couple of weeks ago. Jordy Lopez Jr. and Casey Tucker share row 8. Adam Gilliland, former eNASCAR Coca-Cola driver, on the inside of row 9 with Brad Mahard, his outside.
Matt Danson's going to be starting in 19th, with Landon Huffman making his debut in top split tonight in 20th. Will Cooley 21st, Seth DeMerchant, no stranger here, 22nd. Behind me is Boyd Hogan and Braden Boulos.
Got a few more drivers here. Santiago Gutierrez has Coach Series experience in the past. He's on the inside of row 13 alongside Larry Pace, Justin Levine, and Carson Hocevar, who came away with a podium finish at Talladega last time out there. On the outside in 28th on the grid, Justin Reed and Devin Curl. Interestingly enough, only the top 29 trucks took time. Derek Bordeaux, Michael Cosi Jr., and Jordan Worth, your 3 back there, and Bordeaux, your points leader, coming into this evening. Once again, this is Darlington Raceway in Darlington, South Carolina, that opened in 1950. It's a 1.36 mile, 2.19 kilometer egg-shaped oval where turns 1 and 2 are a little bit wider than turns 3 and 4. 25 degrees of banking in 1 and 2, 23 degrees of banking in 3 and 4, 3 degrees of banking on the front stretch, 2 degrees of banking on the back stretch. In sim, it is May 8th, 2021, just around 3:30 p.m. local time. Air temp is 81 degrees Fahrenheit, track temp 108 degrees Fahrenheit, winds headed to the south at 7 miles an hour, and at 30% humidity to start us off. For a quick report from pit road before we go green flag racing, we turn it over to our man down there this evening, Justin Prince.
And when I spoke with Anthony Burrows this week, one of the main things he noted is his season's been up and down, his opinion, as much as it could be so far. He's gotten a pole in the past, which took him by surprise in the past, especially with how he struggled in qualifying. But it's really taught him how to overcome and never give up. He said one of his keys to victory for tonight was trying to put up a pole lap like he did at Richmond, where he thinks if he can get out early, he can pull weight with clean air, and in turn could be tough for people to pass the bottom if they get in position to. In other words, Burrows has achieved the first step of what his goals are.
Winning the pole is one thing, finishing in P1 something else entirely. But we're glad you're with us here tonight on Podium Esports as we get set for race number 5 and round number 1 of the eNASCAR Road to Pro qualifying iRacing series. Burrows takes the green and we are underway at Darlington. This race is settled out properly, and Anthony Burrows is your race leader. We mentioned that we've got a lot of throwbacks this evening, and Burrows will be the first one that we touch on, that Waltermobile, the bright orange. If anything, it's that little black strip along the underside, right there by the side skirts, that should be the giveaway. You probably recognize this a little bit more if it were 100% accurate and it had the black top to go with it, but this is a throwback to the 2005 paint scheme with which Tony Stewart won his second of 3 NASCAR Cup Series titles. Never won a race at Darlington, interestingly enough, in his career, but this scheme is going to see if it can get one over on the rest of the field, and Burrows has got a solid truck out in front just ahead of Tucker Minter, who settled into the second position.
And that's somebody that I'd be watching for here, James. Tucker Minter started back in the number 4 position, but he is on the move. The black and green wrecking machine. It's a Gravedigger Chevy Silverado tonight. Started back in the number 4 position, and he has driven his way not only to P2, but the last couple of times by faster than that 62 machine of Burrows up the road. So just watch those top 2 cars. Minter may be looking for the race lead early here at Darlington.
I think we'd be remiss not to hit on Minter's scheme on a personal note for you and for Josh. So I'll go to you individually just because you two work for Monster Jam. So that's a scheme that's got a little bit larger place in your heart than I think most of these in the field win tonight. How cool is it to see Gravedigger up front?
Well, I personally run a couple of Monster Jam related paint schemes on the off-road trucks here on the service, but he's done a fantastic job at putting it on his race truck tonight, and he hyped it up on social media. No numbers on it, so that's an interesting take, but I think it's cool, right? It's something different. It's something unique. It's one of the most iconic pieces of machinery in all of motorsports, the Gravedigger Monster Jam truck, and there's a giant piece of it in my room behind me. So clearly a very sentimental truck, Josh. You know, for both of us, it's just the most known Monster Jam truck, and I think all kids who kind of get involved like we did when we were young, that's kind of the first truck you always remember.
Oh, without a doubt. And it's the first really truck that anybody buys when they go into Target. Look at the Spin Master Monster Jam trucks. They'll see a Gravedigger on the pegs, and it's just one of the most iconic looking paint schemes in the world. That paint scheme actually originated back almost 25 years ago. It was somebody in near Kill Devil Hills, North Carolina, that the original creator of Gravedigger, Dennis Anderson, went to painted Harley tanks, and he painted the ghost on the side, the graveyard, and it became known now as what it is today. And Jim McShay at the Feld Entertainment offices does a great job at hand painting every single Gravedigger truck, and it just has a lot of sentimental for me as well. And it's great to see Tucker Minter running in second, still about 3.5 tenths back from your current leader, Anthony Burrows, as the 62 continues to try and run away with the lead.
I'll try and resist as much as I can from introducing him the way they do at all the shows, where he's up to, what, 33, 34 world titles at this point. But it's never just Gravedigger. It's always a big breath and then Gravedigger or something to that effect. So we won't blow out the speakers on people's systems tonight, but we'll have some fun watching that truck go around. And we'll also keep an eye on Donovan Strauss, who seems to be gaming on Tucker Minter just a little bit. And we'll head down to Justin Prince for a report on the 51 machine.
When it comes to Donovan Strauss, he put in days and hours of work into this race, he told me. He said he honestly can't count the exact hours, but it's been a long 2 weeks to work on this truck. And when this track had its changes, especially a couple days ago, he got to work on it and honestly didn't have to change too much, but definitely had to change some things. But when it comes to this paint up, it's a special paint scheme for him for tonight. The Elliott Sowers 2011 in paint scheme from the, at the time, called Nationwide Series, where Elliott Sowers become a special person in his life in the past 2 months, and since he drives for them, he felt he was the right thing to do, along with 2011 being the first year he was watching the sport of NASCAR, James.
Oh, how about that? He's not the only one that claims 2011 is his first year. I know there's someone else in our booth here that also claims 2011 is the first year they got into the sport. We'll let them tell the story there. But yeah, really cool to see Donovan Strauss running the One Main Financial colors on that truck. And Elliott actually did run that in the Truck Series as well. Probably more known for his exploits in what is now the NASCAR Xfinity Series. But that car truck vehicle ran between both of them. So also for those who didn't believe the whole Monster Jam bit, just take a look at your screens here real quick, because I think we have tangible proof that we can show here.
Yeah, we're not over exaggerating things. I don't know if this is going to fit in the shot, so I'm just going to roll back.
Better. His is a lot better than mine, though.
I can't top that. Can't top that. That's
this is the truck on track, so that's why I love the Tucker Minter paint scheme. And just to close out that point, the bodies, especially Gravedigger specifically, I mean, hand painted to this day. So we talk about history. Once upon a time, all these race trucks, a lot of the time, used to be hand painted, right? So I think that's an awesome tie-in, and why not something different? I may be biased. It gets one of my early votes for one of the top throwback cars in this race, but you talk about the sentimental reason behind a lot of these. There are so many cool throwbacks in all various forms of motorsports on track tonight.
Just sort of flipping through the field and looking to see some of the cool ones. I know we've got some good stories across the board, and I look back, some of the other ones that stand out to me in particular, riding on board here with Landon Huffman. He's throwing it back to the last start that his father Robert made in the NASCAR Camping World Truck Series back in 2005 when his dad ran a Toyota Tundra. Of course, his dad best known for his exploits with the oh goodness gracious, I almost screwed that up, but the White House Toyota Celica and the then NASCAR Goodies Dash Series, the first series in which Toyota won a series title in NASCAR back in the early 2000s, and then Huffman got the call to go truck racing for a little bit. So really cool to see that personal connection, Jeff McConey, with that. We know how big Landon is when it comes to short track racing, how much he loves short track racing and sort of old school racing, the surface, whether or not it's the trucks or the 87 cars. This seems like a fitting track to see that machine in action.
That it certainly is. Landon, someone I work with a lot, and I know that was a very special throwback for him, throwing back to his dad. Someone else that I work with a lot that's getting a throwback actually done for them is on Brian LaPrad's car, Anthony Alfredo. This is a throwback to Anthony's first ever race in a late model. So first ever touring series race, and there's a picture up on Briar's Twitter. And I don't know how happy Anthony is about having that one posted, because it's way back when. But we can throw it over now to Justin Prince, who's got some more information for us.
Yes, indeed, and he felt it would be a great idea to utilize this scheme as a throwback for this race, especially with the partnership with Anthony Alfredo and this program with Lockdown Racing. But when it comes to those track updates, he felt the downside was the speed and confidence he had coming into the race, where William Cooley, he mentioned, adapted quick to those adjustments, putting a lot of time in track time overall to get things fixed up for this race. More than 500 laps returned by LaPrade for this event, and he considers Darlington one of his better tracks, so he started putting in the time to get that little bit better and hopes it will pay off for tonight. Been very calm on the radio right now in this race, been dialed in on what's going on around him and in front of him.
So well that works. We know Anthony Alfredo, a veteran of those northeastern short tracks. He, of course, a Connecticut native. So you say words like Seekonk and Stafford and other things that Jeff McConey knows very well. Those will probably perk some ears, right, Jeff?
Well, I don't think he ever actually raced at Stafford, but he is one of the hometown heroes. Jordan Worth now in a little bit of trouble. There's an incident further back on track, but I think that was Derek Bordeaux he got into, someone who's been racing very, very well here. But yeah, Anthony coming from the short tracks now, tearing it up in the Cup Series, and man, that's awesome to see. And Brian LaPrade, that is a really good-looking truck there, if I may say so myself. But a little bit of short track action here as Jordan Worth and a couple other cars all came together, and I think everybody's going still. Everyone's no worse for wear, but maybe some hurt feelings.
We'll see if that develops into anything further back in this field. Just keeping an eye here on Donovan Strauss, who has managed to hang tough with Anthony Burrows. These two have separated from everybody else in the field to the tune of about 1.6, 1.7 seconds. So it's just these two on top of each other for the race lead, and then a battle for third and fourth between Tucker Minter and the Grave Digger Mobile, and then Blake Muir, who's running his standard colors, and Justin Bolton, who isn't running a throwback, but is running the very familiar Busch Light colors that you see on Kevin Harvick's car in the NASCAR Cup Series. Bolton, of course, not only someone who ran for Stewart Haas Esports in the Coke Series last year, but an employee of Stewart Haas Racing and based out of their Kannapolis, North Carolina shop. So this has a bit of a different meaning to him, and maybe sentimental in a different way.
Well, certainly so, and you know, on the throwback topic, I mean, even though it's not one of them, I think that Busch consistently has not only the best designs at NASCAR's top level with Kevin Harvick, but they have the most fun, and I think that's what it needs to be about. As we look a little bit further back at this side-by-side battle between the number 9 of Dylan Alt, that's the 42 numbered truck in this race, as he's right now in a battle of a turn number 4, and on the losing end of that exchange, Cody Bias going to get on by as we look off of the back of that number 27 Duval Creative Toyota. But you know, that's the point that I made earlier, that sentimentality I think is what takes a throwback from being cool to being awesome, and fun learning all these stories, and the history of all these drivers is up the road. I think a little bit of the wall that time for Colin Keister, and that's going to cost him a spot. Look at the move by Parker Retzlaff, who crosses him over to the inside and takes the spot away.
There's a good Darlington stripe there, and then trouble on the straightaway, as I think Keister just got turned into the wall again and will be passed up by the 44 of Jordy Lopez. They bounce off of each other one more time, and Lopez gets loose in the middle of the corner. But that's just how tight and narrow this track is. We talked about it at the beginning of the broadcast, how the racing line at Darlington is incredibly tight, and Keister's into the fence and is already headed to pit road on lap 26. So a change in strategy for Keister, Josh. He's going to come down pit road and make his stop early.
And he's heading down Justin Prince's way right now. And then also more damage for Brian LaPrade on that front end. Just a little bit of it pushed inwards. And Jeff McConey can comment on this as well. Front end damage for these cars means a more punched hole in the radiator, which is going to lead to those oil temperatures, those water temperatures starting to climb, and hopefully Brian LaPrade is able to work his engine through the remainder of this race. We're still in the early stages as Brian LaPrade loses a spot to Brian Mercurio, running a Casey Mears target throwback from the mid-2000s.
I think that front end damage, I'm not too concerned about temperatures if I'm him, but I am concerned about how that car is going to handle. He took a lot of damage right to the front end. I don't think the toe's knocked out of it or anything, but it's just not going to be driving right. And he was hanging strong there. He had a really good qualifying effort. Brian LaPrade did, qualifying in 9th. Now he's fallen back to 13th, and he's holding on.
Truck looks very, very loose indeed as we go on board with LaPrade just behind Jordi Lopez, who I guess we can sort of call that I don't know if faux back is the right word, but you've got that gradient on there, which I believe, if my memory serves me correctly, Evan, this is a nod to the Kenny Irwin, Jeff Burton, Ray Bestis truck back in the very early days of the NASCAR Camping World Truck Series in the 1990s.
And I talk about, some of the sponsors and partners having fun, right? That's the key to making these throwbacks work. And not only do you have the design, but you've also got the throwback Logitech logo on the side, right, as well. So to the point that I made about Busch being a great partner and letting, Kevin Harvick and Stuart Haas do so many different things with their branding at the Cup Series level on a regular basis, these brands can always stop that from happening, right? So it's good to see companies like Logitech allow guys to do these kind of throwbacks. The 90s Jeff Burton look, I think, for Jordi Lopez there. So fun, that is the key. Have fun with it. And so far for Jordi, I think he's having an all right night. Started 15th up to 13th. As a little bit further on down, his teammate Michael Cozy Jr. in a bit of trouble, caught the fence, and side by side right now with Jordan Worth.
Jordan Worth going to get around Michael Cozy Jr. and yeah, Burton there, and then Kenny Irwin too. You think of drivers that had a huge career ahead of them that tragically got cut short when he lost his life in that crash in New Hampshire back in 2000. I think there's a part of all of us who were around back then that wonder what he could have done. And it's very cool to see the whole of Logitech G Altus Esports honoring Irwin and Burton with their throwbacks tonight. Also, want to say hello to a certain NASCAR Xfinity Series driver, Ryan Vargas, who's giving a nod to the Gravedigger scheme for you, Evan, and Josh, where, and I quote, "That Gravedigger scheme is what got me into cars in general." I'm a big Dennis Anderson fan, and to be fair, is he wrong? I don't think he is, Josh.
I don't think there's anybody that's not a fan of the creator of Gravedigger, Dennis Anderson. Hands down, one of the best drivers to ever wheel a Monster Jam truck, or a monster truck in general. Started all the way back in the 80s with the TNT Monster Truck Challenge and stayed with Gravedigger all the way up until 2017 with his unfortunate retirement. But he still lives on. His sons and daughter, Adam Ryan and Kristen, and future Weston Anderson, going to take over the reins of Gravedigger very soon. So the Gravedigger name is in great hands with his children, and they're continuing to carry on that legacy. But carrying on this race, it's Donovan Strauss up in the front. He grabbed the lead away from Anthony Burrows and is now pulling away up at the front. A solid 1.2 seconds the gap now between first and second. It's Strauss, Burrows, Minter, Neer, and Jeremy Allen finding himself up in the top 5.
Allen carrying the colors of the Virginia Tech Hokies out of the Atlantic Coast Conference, who have more than their fair share of fans in NASCAR, no doubt about it. You go to Martinsville, and it is most definitely Hokie country. You may see a few folks from the other schools sort of chipped in there, but them's fighting words when you get towards the mountains in the Southwest, and beautiful, beautiful part of the country. If you get the chance to go to Martinsville in person, whether or not it's the spring race or the fall race, highly recommended, and not just for the hot dogs. But Allen putting together one of his best runs of the, I think whole season, just about. I don't know if we've seen him this far up in the field.
Well, the fact that this race has gone so far, I'm not going to say incident-free. We've seen a couple of Darlington stripes, some close calls. You mentioned the one with Cozy. There was one with Matt Danson and Landon Huffman that had a bit of a discussion over the radio. So it is not completely clean to this point. However, we are green through now, and it's allowed those leaders, as Josh mentioned, to really stretch things out. I thought Minter was going to go to the race lead early. He since dropped back, and this is where all the action is, right? They start to stack them up once you get to Bolton in P6 and everybody else down. So that is this train of 7 trucks. Bolton, Faridaj, McKissick, Retzlaff, Bias, Alt, and Mercurio at the rear of it all, and then Lopez and Gilliland a little bit further down. That's the battle right now. On track is this big pack just inside of the top 10.
a big group here that starts with Bolton, runs it all the way back to Mercurio, and that Casey Mears, Reed Sorensen, Chip Ganassi target scheme that Josh referenced earlier. You can pick about maybe 2 or 3 drivers that ran the 41 truck back in the day, but if you needed a little bit of help, you go look at that DM software logo on the side repeated 4 or 5 times over. That should tip folks off, and for anybody who watched NASCAR in the mid-2000s, that should be a pretty obvious nod. Although, interestingly enough, Josh, I don't think this particular scheme ever ran on a truck in real life.
I'm not 100% sure about that either. I don't think it did, but obviously it's one of the most well-known schemes. I'd say I put the target schemes throughout the years of NASCAR racing as some of the most iconic schemes that you could recognize, and you can recognize the year just by the target scheme, because I feel like all of them sort of took on a new look every single year, or at least every single driver that went in to drive any of the target cars that have graced the NASCAR circuit. And I vividly remember always buying the target cars whenever they would show up on the target pegs as well, next to the Monster Jam trucks that I would also buy as a child walking into target. But the 41 car looking really well out there on the racetrack right now, still trying to work their way up through the field as they continue to just work over lap 39 now, and side by side a little bit further back, it's Jordan Worth and a huge host of Logitech G-Altus Esports cars, and they're bouncing off each other as they head through turns 1 and 2.
This has been a really good battle over the course of the last 5 to 10 laps, but as we approach lap 40, this race is flying by. And Jeff Bocconi, we need to start thinking about our first set of pits, Josh, because we're not terribly far removed. We see one truck making his way down to pit road. That's the 13 machine. A few trucks, actually. One of the Logitech G-Altus Esports trucks coming in. So Brad Mahar and Braden Bulos coming in. But in terms of strategy, what are you looking at if you're sitting on the crew chief's box?
Well, you can make it about 55, at most 60 laps if you're really conservative before you run out of fuel. However, right now we're about 2 seconds off the pace from where we started off. Donovan Strauss, his fastest lap was a 29.933, and he hung around at the 29.930.0 for a little while there towards the start. He's now running 31.9s, and he's by far the fastest car on track. You look a little further back, and you're running into the 32s, low 32s. So now I think you're going to start to see people start to come in. You know that you're going to have to break this up into at least 2 pit stops. You might as well come down and make one right about now.
And here comes your leader. Donovan Strauss is down pit road on lap 42, and it looks like he's going to bring Tucker Mincher with him. So your leaders are in about a third of the way through this race, maybe a little bit shorter than that. But if they're coming in now, Jeff, that suggests to me that you're probably going to see them in twice more, I would think. And you sort of go about 43, 86, 130-ish ballpark, somewhere maybe?
That's where my math is putting them right about now. So lap 40, so they ran 42 green flag laps. That's about, it's a little shorter than what you can run. So you come in right around, let's say 42, then you're going to come in right around 90, then maybe make your last stop. Well, you could make it to the end. So yeah, from there, you're probably going to 2-stop, would be my guess.
You would think, but then again, there's always the potential for yellows here. We almost had one a little bit earlier, had some incidents towards the back of the field. Carson Hocevar was near Jordan Worth. We saw what happened to Colin Keister, who's still down pit road with the damage. A big shame here, as Burrows is going to come down pit road from the race lead. He was in second before the cycle started, so he's in for service, and it leaves, I believe, 8 trucks left to come down for service 7, if my math is right.
Yeah, the pit stops are coming fast and furious now with everybody cycling through. We're looking at about the top 8 or so, 6 or 7, maybe depending on how they cycle through, with Burrows now down to pit road. That number is going to be 8, and we'll see where this pit cycle puts those cars who came in first, those trucks that went for the very early undercut when they started to trickle in. Will they be able to not only maybe get track position, gain some spots, but is that going to be something that they can hold on to as we look for the second stint of this race to go clean and green like the first one, but giving Jeremy Allen an opportunity to lead some laps up front. That Virginia Tech Toyota Tundra started 7th. Parker Retzlaff up to P2. Casey Tucker and Seth the Bertrand from 22nd. Some of the other drivers who have yet to come down pit road, with Neer, McKissick, and Hocevar down pit road this time. And Parker Retzlaff just said over the radio he'll be coming down right now from P2.
And there goes Allen down pit road, same for Parker Retzlaff. So Allen's in with the Virginia Tech colors. And then I believe, if I've got this right, Josh Lee, I could be wrong, but it looks an awful lot like one of the Bill Lester Dodge trucks back in the early 2000s. But there might be another truck, another scheme that I might be missing here.
We were arguing about Retzlaff before we went green there about what his throwback was there, but everybody coming down pit road, one of the earlier takers was Brian Mercurio in that target scheme that we were talking about. Justin Prince, what do you got on Brian?
And he emphasized to me before this race today that pit strategy was going to be very important to make sure you're not caught at the wrong time and lose too much to the guys around you. He said he thought about what would work best. We've seen what the strategy is now. It's just a matter of needing the cars to fall in the right way. And the funny thing when it comes to the paint scheme too is he felt that his sponsor's logo that you see on that car with the little replacements from the at the time logo at the time would give him the opportunity to run this throwback since he hadn't run with this Chip Ganassi number font before, and was hoping to see some other throwbacks such as his in this race. And well, there's the creative side of things coming into play for Mercurio for his throwback, utilizing his current sponsor and trying to emphasize it for the throwback.
It is pretty intelligent because you look at the way that works, and when you've got a round circular logo like that, unless you have a long form horizontal text, the only way to really make that work is to repeat it. And when you repeat it like that, it sort of naturally leads you into that scheme because the target bullseyes were repeated the exact same way, Evan. So I'd say, if anything, that's a clever adaptation by Mercurio to not only come up with a good-looking truck, but one that works for the partners that he currently has.
Yeah, that's the key, right? I mean, it's easy to, or I'm not to suggest that it's a walk in the park, right? But it's one thing to just go through and totally recreate a scheme, and it's another to get creative with your marketing there. And as you mentioned, get those current partners and kind of retool the logos and whatnot to match the original style. And those bullseyes, if you're not working with somebody who's got a circular logo, takes a little bit of creativity. So kudos for them for making that happen as we watch all of this cycle everybody through. And I'm looking off of the back of Dylan Alt right now in the middle of traffic, just coming off a turn number 2 down the back straightaway. Still waiting on the final 2 drivers, and with Matt Danson now hitting pit road, we are waiting on the final 1 driver to come down pit road, and there he is, the number 20 of Casey Tucker up on the outside wall. Once he pits, pit service is complete, and Donovan Strauss will cycle through to be the race leader after this exchange of green flag service.
So Strauss will cycle back up to the front. We're waiting on Casey Tucker to come down pit road. He's the last machine there, and the I guess, shall we call it, Alan Kowicki, Kale Yarbrough. It's very clearly in that shape. Same kind of scheme that Anthony Alfredo took to a top 3 finish in the eNASCAR Pro Invitational iRacing Series last night. But the Boozy Raceway machine is the last one to make his pit stop. And when he comes down, we would hope within the next few laps, it will mean that Donovan Strauss cycles back to the front, this time with a 2-second lead over Tucker Minter. And then some good battles here just a little bit further back in what will be for 3rd and 4th. Justin Bolton, Anthony Burrows, and Dylan Alt running nose to tail, all within about maybe, call it what, half a second, Josh?
Yeah, and everybody's starting to close in on each other as they were at the start of this race right after pit stops. And just an update on Casey Tucker, who's your current leader as he is yet to come down pit road. His throwback scheme is actually a throwback to Benny Parsons in the 28. So he's running the 28 tonight. Abruzzi on the side of that car as opposed to JD Stacy that was on the side of Benny Parsons number 28. But he's staying out a long way here, and I'm wondering, Jeff McConey, what's the thought process behind staying out this long? Is it going to give him any sort of advantage, or is it just going to be a net loss in positions for Casey Tucker?
This is the long haul strategy. Right now, he's running it out all the way to the end of his fuel cycle, so he's going to be able to go out. Now, If he pits here right around, let's say 57, 58 that he pits, if not already. So then he can go to about lap 115 or so, and then towards the end, he'll be on very fresh tires. This is hoping that there's no cautions. This is hoping that things fall his way, but when you've got the entire field stacked against you, it's a little bit more difficult here. When everyone else has already made their stop and is running on a different strategy, either way, you have to stop 2 times. Personally, I would have stuck with the rest of the field, but at the same time, you're never going to win by doing the same thing as everyone else. It's a lot easier to make everyone play your game rather than trying to conform to theirs.
So Casey Tucker is going to try and stretch this one out pretty far. Also note Anthony Burroughs was able to clear Justin Bolton for the 4th position just a few moments ago. And when Tucker comes down, that'll be 3rd that Burroughs is able to pick up. He's got about 4.5, 5 seconds up the racetrack to Tucker Minter. So some work to do for the Walter Mobile, but I guess he can do it and we can help, I suppose. If we're going back to 2005, we'll pull out one of the old Home Depot slogans and make everybody grow and watching at home for yet another terrible pun on a podium broadcast. But in either case, just flipping through the field, trying to make sure that we touch on some of the other great stories. I didn't get the chance to touch Colin Keister's machine. He's stuck on pit road trying to get the damage repaired after his truck hit the fence earlier. But Keister will give him some air time just so you can see the nod to the Matt Kenseth scheme from 2006 Josh Lee. Kenseth, of course, one of the most consistent drivers in his time in the NASCAR Cup Series, and always good to figure out how to get to the top 5, top 10 just about everywhere they ran in the mid-2000s.
When we talk about consistent drivers in the NASCAR Cup Series all the time, I want to talk about a consistent driver here in the NASCAR Road to Pro qualifying iRacing Series. That's Derek Bordeaux in the 04. 2 wins in the top split this season, Atlanta and last time out at Talladega. Justin Prince, you have an update on Derek Bordeaux from Ryan Luza, Bordeaux's crew chief.
Yes, indeed. And right now, his team is doing whatever they can to get him track position. They short pitted there, so him and his organization are currently hoping to get spots and maybe a caution to help get closer into the field. He's also gone to the wall a couple times, so he is dealing with damage, the team says. So that's being dealt with right now. He did tell me earlier before this race that he felt it was very nice to have a good points gap over the cut line, but his organization had to rebuild their entire setup for this racetrack for tonight.
Had to do a ton, and we have seen Casey Tucker come down pit road, finally makes his way down on lap 59, coming 260 here. So Tucker will come in for service, and it will cycle everybody around to the race lead. So now we keep an eye here on some of these tracks in the field. We'll go on board with Brandon McKissick trying to chase down Adam Gilliland.
Do what he can to make up some spots, and we talk about the strategy in all of this. Unable to make it to the halfway point is going to be a big pain point there for Casey Tucker, because it's basically maximum loss in this, right? 5 laps shy of getting to that halfway point. And we mentioned that if you go for the short pit, obviously you're going to get that strategy right out of the gate, but then the cars who pitted a little bit after you, they're going to have a little bit better tires, and in theory they'll run you down. But with Tucker now in and Donovan Strauss to the top of the board, I mean, he's sitting pretty comfortable, I will say. I don't think that it was the undercut really that was the advantage for him, as we see this 4-truck pack right now in the set number 3 and 4. That is Santiago Tierra is at the front of the line, Drew Farina is second, Cody Bias third, and peeking down low is Jeremy Allen. He'll go to the inside and take a spot away from Cody Bias in the 16. But James, I feel like a lot of time was made up by cars coming on and off of pit road, more so than the 1 or 2 lap difference in which they pitted. I think that's the difference maker for Strauss and Minter being ahead of Anthony Burroughs, who is your pole sitter right now, kind of stuck back in 3rd place, nearly 7 seconds off of the top spot.
And this is a track where that can matter a lot more than just about anywhere else, because you've got a ton of options in terms of how you enter pit road. There are about 3 or 4 different lines that you can take to get to the commitment cone here at Darlington, and it's got a bunch of variety in a way that I don't think is matched pretty much anywhere else in the schedule for the Road to Pro qualifying iRacing series. So you certainly can gain a tremendous amount of time there if you know what you're doing. But for now, we are going to step aside and take our first commercial break of the evening, and we'll come back with more action from Darlington Raceway. This is Podium Esports coverage of the eNASCAR Road to Pro qualifying iRacing series from the virtual Lady in White. Welcome back to Podium Esports coverage of the fifth race in the first round for the 2020-21 eNASCAR Road to Pro qualifying iRacing series. James Pike, Evan Pachoco, Josh Lee, Jeff McConey, Justin Prince here with you, with Ryan Brower bringing you all the camera action this evening, and cams provided to us by Dougie Beard as we work our way through the midway point of this race. And as a matter of fact, we're closing in on halfway, and there's your leader, Donovan Strauss, working his way around Carson Hocevar, putting Hocevar lap down. Hocevar, we haven't talked about his scheme tonight, but a throwback to the Johnny Benson machine that he took to victory lane on fumes not too far up the road at Rockingham Speedway in 2003. The Valvoline number 10 Pontiac was the best equipped machine that day to stretch the fuel just a little bit longer than everybody else, and he played the fuel mileage to get the job done and pick up one of a handful of wins in NASCAR's top 3 series. Of course, Benson also the Camping World Truck Series champion back in 2008, so a little bit of pedigree there as well. We'll go over with Parker Retzlaff for just a few moments, but as Donovan Strauss crosses the line, we officially have crossed into the second half of tonight's race, and it is now time to bring you our iRacing Midway Race Break, which as always comes to you courtesy of iRacing, the world's premier online racing game. iRacing puts you in the driver's seat to experience today's newest form of competitive motorsport, virtual racing, all from your home PC. Race virtually in Australian supercars, IndyCar, IMSA, NASCAR, the World of Outlaws, and more. Donovan Strauss, your race leader after 71 laps complete of 140. Tucker Minter riding in the second position. Third belongs to Anthony Burrows, while Justin Bolton holds fourth. Fifth is where you'll find Dylan Alt. In P6 is Brian Mercurio. Jeremy Allen runs in seventh. The eighth position belongs to Santiago Tires. Cody Bias holds the ninth spot, and completing the top 10 as they stand, Evan Pachoco is Parker Retzlaff.
And those last couple of drivers moving up, one driver dropping down 3 is Drew Farinaj, who sits in the number 11 spot, and Blake Adair, once upon a time, was P6 on the grid. He's now down in position 12. Jordy Lopez, pretty stationary so far tonight, sits 13th spot, but Brandon McKissick from the front row down to what's now going to be 13th. He just got around Lopez, so make it 13th for McKissick, 14th for Lopez, and Adam Gilliland behind them riding in 15th spot. Derek Bordeaux through traffic from 31st. He's up to number 16 spot right at the moment, just ahead of Landon Huffman in 17th. Seth the Merchant, 1 spot for the back at 18th spot, along with his teammate Michael Cozy Jr. P19, and Brady DeBulos, Josh, rounds out our top 20.
And then you can see Will Cooley going right around on the inside line as they dive into turn 3. That's going to put Will Cooley now up into 20th. Bulos back to 21st. But Jordan Worth, bottom split CEO, sitting right there behind in 22nd. Justin Levine, Matt Danson, and Casey Tucker round out your top 25. That's the end of your lead lap cars. Then looking down the rest of the field, everybody 1 lap down or more. Larry Pace, Carson Hocevar, Briar LaPrade, Boyd Hogan. He had a tech issue, lagged out at the green flag. He sits 5 laps down in 29th. Brad Mahar 11 laps down in 30th and off of the track. Colin Keister still trying to get damage repaired in pit road in 31st. Justin Reed off the track, and Devin Curl, he had a tech issue at the green flag as well. He sits 67 laps down in 33rd.
And that completes your full field rundown in tonight's iRacing Midway Race Break. And with over 170,000 drivers on the service and over 90 laser scan traction cars to choose from, iRacing is your portal to the racing world. Get on track today at iRacing.com, and don't forget, you can join iRacing for a special price of $20.22 for the first few months. You can go check out the next gen cars. That deal just dropped yesterday as part of the release of the next gen NASCAR Cup Series machines that will enter service beginning with Speed Week 2022 yesterday. They came online, so people are going to get a full 9 months to get used to that car in sim before it goes racing in real life and in full composition, which will be cool no matter what happens. But for more information, we know that Josh Lee mentioned a few tech issues for some of our drivers tonight. Justin Prince has more.
Yes, indeed, for Boyd Hogan, unfortunately, laying down at the start of the race, coming to the green flag, so that's why he's currently 5 laps down the racetrack as the last car running. But when it comes to some of the other drivers, for Donovan Strauss, from JD Laird, his crew chief, he mentioned he feels his driver's been really solid, and their goal is to just keep it in between the white walls. That's the main goal right now. To run 80% is 100%. Strauss had mentioned he was confident entering into the race, but didn't want to be overconfident, but felt really good about their speed before tonight's action. As well, when it comes to Justin Bolton, they made an adjustment after being really tight from the first one where they were extremely loose, and they feel the track is tightening up. Right now, they're riding, trying to keep the tires on their truck more clean. They also feel the clean air is going to be able to be used to take advantage of that as well. They've got a cleaner buffer of about 2 seconds.
So a little bit more space there, but then again, these trucks are pretty well spaced out of Pasoko. There's a lot of room to roam here, and this is a track that races much more like a road course in that sense. I think more often than not, you're racing Darlington more than you are the field around you.
Yeah, that's exactly right. That's how you refer to it, right? It's more so driver versus track than it is driver versus driver. In fact, there's many times where these drivers will do their very best to make sure you aren't side by side with somebody in the corner. Now, of course, start of the race, you're going to have a bit of that, but if there's ever a pass, if somebody gets positioned on them, you are much better off letting them go than you are challenging them back into the corner. You need to play the long game here at Darlington. It just is not worth junking your truck or even somebody else's to try to fight a spot off for one extra lap. And I think that long game really coming into play with this race that's now caution free through 80 of 140 laps and nearly on the cusp of a second cycle to pit service. So certainly this one coming down to whoever's been patient enough and calculated enough to walk that fine line at Darlington that's both fast but not a little bit too aggressive.
walk the line there. I can feel a Johnny Cash reference is coming, which I think would be nothing short of appropriate for a place like this. As you see some of these trucks wheel their way around turns 1 and 2. One of the few schemes we've not had the chance to talk about tonight that I don't necessarily know if it counts as a throwback, but we're going to count it as one, only for its historical significance to iRacing. But the number 8 of Drew Friedage, who's wheeling around the iRacing Chevrolet Silverado. This is the scheme that Chase Elliott drove to victory lane at Charlotte Motor Speedway in the NASCAR Camping World Truck Series last May. And this truck in the scheme then becomes significant because it was the first ever win for an iRacing sponsored truck in any of NASCAR's 3 national series. And you know how we had some sheet metal a little bit earlier? We got a little bit more than that this time because, yes, we're that kind of nerd. I have no shame in making sure that I got my part of history, and I hope everybody else did too. Yeah. Evans is a little bit fancier just because he was smart. He actually put his off the little plate. I haven't had the chance to take mine off, but you can sort of get in and you dig in. You see some of the bugs and all on the side and the tires and everything.
I wonder if Drew will sign it for me. You think my Drew Friedage diecast?
Honestly, I'm here for that thought. I'd say Drew Friedage, although my fear is that Drew Adamson would probably want to try and sign it first, knowing him. But
yeah, that's fair.
A loving nod to our executive producer at iRacing, Drew Adamson, who is the man responsible for all the broadcasts that you see of the Coke Series, the Porsche Tacular Esports Super Cup, the iRacing portions of the eNASCAR Pro Invitational iRacing Series. So a good friend of ours and a friend of Podium Esports as we continue to chug along. And also a note here, as I look at chat, only because I'm going to take a moment to give a personal shout out here to Lady Abaddon bringing up the Racing Spaces reference. For those who haven't had the chance to jump into Twitter on Tuesday nights, I know that there are a fair few folks who have kept it on during the Coke Series, but there's a group of folks primarily based around the sports car side of the industry who have come together and they have fun discussions with regards to all sorts of racing topics. I cannot talk tonight, geez, but racing topics from all across the industry, be it open wheel racing, sports car racing, stock car racing, all that sort of stuff, and a Chris Angel rating system too. That's also become very popular. So you get the chance on Tuesday nights, fling it up alongside the Coke Series or any other thing that you might have on. Certainly a lot of fun to tune in, and you may see some famous folks in there every once in a while. I know that Vargas has popped in every once in a while, and a few other famous drivers too. I think Raja Karuk was on there. We know Raja's running in some of these other splits, and so you never know who's going to pop up. But we now run on board with Seth the Merchant in what is officially scored as the 3-car, what is actually the 57 machine. And so he, part of that Logitech G-Altis esports group that's running the Burton Irwin throwbacks that we mentioned a little bit earlier, trying to run down his teammate, Jordy Lopez Jr., to try and get another spot there.
And they go battling back into turn 3, and a huge get out of the gas with the 57. He's coming to pit road. DeMerchant is in, slides it in there, needing to get it slowed down for that commitment cone. He does so. DeMerchant is into the pit lane, lap number 88. So is a whole host of cars. LeBrad in, Retzlaff in. We're expecting to see more. Tucker Minters making his way in as well.
Derek Bordeaux just spun on the entry to pit road, and there was someone right in front of Donovan Strauss. Not sure who that was, but he had to check way up. So it's a little bit of mayhem here getting onto pit road for these guys.
Mayhem indeed, and that's just the nature of getting down to pit road on Darlington. We said there's a lot of variety in the ways that you can enter this pit lane, but that doesn't mean that makes it any easier. It's one of the toughest pit lanes to get onto, Evan, and tricky, and it can trip some of these drivers up.
And that goes to the point that I made earlier, right? On that first exchange of pit stops, I almost feel like more time was gained or lost on the execution on pit road, more so than the time in which they actually came down, right? The lap number. And the only way you're going to make up time is by pushing the truck like that. If it's a cookie cutter pit road and everybody can get down same, you're not going to have those 2 to 3 second swings on total time on pit road like we did on that first cycle. So that right there is a perfect example of why the likes of Strauss up front, now down as your race leader, we're going to make up time on that first exchange of pit stops because you can push it, and if you don't go over that line, you can certainly be rewarded.
there's a lot to lose, but a lot to gain as well, as we're starting to see the entirety of the field shuffle in. Donovan Strauss has just come off of pit road, so it leaves the top 7 already. The last cars, or last trucks in this case, rather, to make their pit stops this evening. Brandon McKissick's going to come down, so guess who's back in front, Josh Lee? None other than that number 28 machine, Casey Tucker.
And like Jeff McConey mentioned, he's on that long haul strategy, so I'm not expecting him to come into pit road for at least another 10-15 laps. But he finds himself out in front. Jordan Worth still staying out. So is Braden Boulos, Matt Danson, a handful of others as well. Larry Pace, Carson Hocevar. Currently, your provisional leader right now, Donovan Strauss, sits in 7th. So that just leaves the top 6 as drivers who have not come into pit road just yet. But we're expecting them to come in here fairly soon as we work on the lap number 92. Everybody working their way through the second round of green flag pit stops.
Shuffling around and making their way around this Darlington Raceway are Casey Tucker and Jordan Worth, who has assumed the 2nd position. Braden Boulos in 3rd, Danson 4th, Larry Pace currently 5th, and then Hocevar 6th. But you can see the tire difference. You look at some of the new and some of the old. Donovan Strauss just blew past Carson Hocevar on the back straightaway, and we imagine that when some of these fresher tires get it to Casey Tucker, we'll see the same thing happen to the 28 truck as well. Currently working lap 93 of 140. This race has flown by Evan Pashoka without a yellow flag, so we'll see whether or not we just completely brought the commentator's curse on this field or not. But again, it's so tough to get around this place. I feel like that in and of itself helps to keep these races cleaner than most.
Yeah, it goes back to what I had mentioned, right? That you're almost willing to make sure you're not in a battle with somebody because you're more concerned about the track. But I thought I might have been a little bit too jinxy with the wording when I said we were good through 80, so we'll see how this one shakes out. On the other hand, this is a track where I think it's more likely that we would have, say, a single truck incident than we would at others. So spreading out the field, typical wisdom would suggest if there's not as many trucks around each other, there's a better chance of us going green. Now, you see this chaos on the backstretch with all the Logitech trucks, and that's simply because we're in the middle of a pit cycle right now with about half a dozen trucks yet to pit. So you got trucks with fresh rubber going by the slower ones, and that's always a precarious position. But I think at Darlington specifically, spaced out may not necessarily guarantee we're going to get away with it, because we've had several incidents, single truck incidents, 2 truck incidents, that very easily could have turned into yellows and they didn't. We got to hang on for another 45 laps. So we'll see how aggressive these drivers want to get to the end of this race. Now, once they get out of this pit cycle, they're going to have the best idea all night of where they stack up in the running order. And if you've been saving anything, now's the time to go for it.
Jeff McConey, I want to come back to you just with regards to the Casey Tucker pit strategy, because if he's staying out and dragging this out, if you're the 28 truck, what are you looking for in all of this?
What you're looking for is for the cards to fall your way and a little bit of luck on your side. So either way, you have to make 2 pit stops. Now, if you go and look at Casey Tucker's times, his fall off is not as bad compared to a lot of the other trucks. He's still putting down very solid times, but running about 32 O's right now. We can expect him to stay out until about lap 110, maybe 115 or so, 120 if he's really stretching it. That means when he comes down and makes his last stop, he's going to be on fresher tires at the end of this race. He could, if he plays his cards right, be able to drive up to the front here. However, his bet is made, and at this point, he needs to lay in it.
You can't really renege on the strategy now. You have to stay out and hope. I think best case scenario here, Josh, is that you get a yellow flag somewhere in the ballpark of maybe lap 120 or so, and everybody else is out on the older worn tires, and you are the one that gets to make that charge to the field on fresh rubber if everything pans out that way. But then again, that's a huge if.
And that is also a huge if we get a caution. We've been green to this entire way, and you can go back to Talladega. We didn't really see any cautions until late. You go back to a slightly similar track to Darlington, Atlanta Motor Speedway. We saw 1 caution, and it was green the rest of the way. So we might see a caution late. We might see this go green to the end. It's just going to be the waiting game as cars now continue to start to spread out. We're seeing some 2-car battles here and there, nothing like we saw closer to the midway part of this race with about 4 or 5 cars together. We'll see if we get back to that point. But right now, it's Tucker, Strauss, Jordan Worth, Tucker Minter, Braden Boulos, your top 5 as they all work their way through lap number 99. We're about to crack open lap 100.
About to go to 3 digits on the lap counter, and as we work our way towards the end of this race, we get a little bit more information on our race leader, Donovan Strauss, or rather second place truck, Donovan Strauss, but net race leader with the pit strategy. We'll head to Justin Prince for more.
Right now on the radio, he's been calm, cool, and collected throughout this race. Right now, JD Laird says they've made no adjustments to that truck since that last pit stop. And right now, the main thing they're looking for, get to the checkered. That's the main goal for Donovan Strauss and his organization at the moment from what's been a dominant race for that team.
Has been dominant, would be his first win in the top split of the eNASCAR Road to Pro qualifying iRacing series in 2021, and arguably in that sense one of the biggest wins in his sim racing career. Evan Pasoko, and somebody who I think is trying to take the lessons he learned from last season's run, where he was in the Contender Series and just didn't have much go his way, but he's been the next level beyond this. He now knows what it's like to race against some of the drivers who are now in the Coke Series, and I have to believe that that kind of experience is only going to build his notebook and make him a better driver in this qualifying series campaign for 2021.
Well, and he is so close, right? I mean, you talk about that experience, having already made it to the second step of this, and oftentimes that's what it takes, right? You don't often see somebody come up to this level and, you know, make their first run through the Road to Pro ladder and get right to the eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series. Sometimes it does take a trip or two just because it's a learning experience, right? You do need to approach these races and this season as a whole, especially this year with the modified format and ladder, differently than you would say an NIS on the service. And coming into tonight, Donovan Strauss is 75th in the points, so he is just on the cusp, and obviously running up front right now at the virtual Darlington Raceway would be a huge step in the right direction for that team's efforts this year.
A big step in the direction for a team that really has grown and established itself and now is one of the most integrated teams in all of virtual stock car racing. They, of course, have their presence in the eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series via Ashton Crowder and Garrett Maines, who both race for LA Sadler Esports, and then the developmental program, which has got Donovan Strauss and a few others who are running pretty well throughout this campaign and have run well in the races leading up to this. But this is a banner night for ESE, no question about it, as Strauss continues to work their way around and get the job done. Also note, another one of their own, Vicente Salas, was flag to flag at Richmond Raceway a few weeks ago in the Coke Series. He was very, very sharp to get his first win there too. We'll keep an eye on Strauss, but while we have a moment and we work our way towards the end of this race, we'll let you know about some of the events coming up in the world of Podium Esports and iRacing, and there are a fair few that we can talk about. You've got the MSRA Premier Series coming up Saturday night from right here at the virtual Lady in Black, an 8 p.m. Eastern start time for that on the secondary Podium Twitch channel, Podium 2, as well as the Podium Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter pages. Then Sunday night, head on over to the main Podium Esports Twitch channel for the MPI Cup Series. They continue their round of 16 playoff run at Chicagoland Speedway. You'll see that broadcast at 9:15 p.m. Eastern. Monday Night Racing continues with the second race of Season 3 with one of their most famous combos, the Pro 2 trucks at Watkins Glen International. 8 p.m. the start time for that on the Podium 2 Twitch, as well as the Podium Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter pages. And then Wednesday, a busy day to say the least. PCA Sim Racing, the Dirt Sprint Car Championship Series, and the ERA EPM Omega Cup, all coming your way on Wednesday night from Long Beach, the dirt track at Charlotte, and Circuit of the Americas, respectively. And you can pretty much head across the board there, head to your respective platform to find the racing that you want to see, whether or not it's road course racing with Porsches, dirt car racing, or road course racing with stock cars at COTA. And then we're back with the next round of the eNASCAR Road to Pro qualifying iRacing Series in 2 weeks' time from Charlotte Motor Speedway. And we'll be back here on the main Podium Esports Twitch channel at 9 p.m. Eastern. And oh, by the way, how about a special event that we can talk about that we will reveal here? We're going to we go next gen racing tomorrow night. Gonna have some Pasoko fella with Devin Henry and Kenneth Bueno at Richmond Raceway with the next gen cars, and you're going to see it right here on Podium Esports at 9:30 p.m. Eastern. Stay tuned. By the end of the broadcast, we'll have more information on how to get in on that. But we're going to put on a big show with the next gen machines and should have a lot of fun as we get used to them at short tracks for the very first time. Donovan Strauss, still your race leader, working his way around the lap traffic. That's Adam Gillen that he just put a lap down. Gillen currently running a little further back in this field. It's back in the 28th position. Not much to talk about until you get to about 4th and 5th. You've got Justin Bolton and Dylan Olt in a good battle, and then a pretty solid pack between Brian Mercurio, Parker Retzlaff, and Cody Bias for 6th, 7th, and 8th, Evan.
Well, yeah, this is what it's come down to, right? We saw that the strategy that Casey Tucker tried to work earlier in this race, right, knew he wasn't be able to go that far and came down pit road well before what would have been his maximum fuel number. So it gives us this battle right out of the gate. I mean, he kind of accepted that he wasn't able to go the distance, and it allows us to pick these battles pretty good, right? So Retzlaff in 7th, Bias all over him in the number 8 position. Bias has been a little bit better the last couple of times through, and both of these drivers started outside of the top 10 and have moved their way in. So they have both had very good afternoons of racing here at Darlington, and you wonder how much it is worth to Cody Bias to fight for that one extra spot, because clearly now in the home stretch of this race, and you see top left of your screen, inside of 30 laps to go, nobody's pulling over for each other. Bias to the inside. Retzlaff holds James early in this race. Retzlaff lets him go there. They are not making it easy on each other now in the final 30, and what a slide by Retzlaff at turn 2. He is pushing that number 42 truck.
You want to talk about a driver that knows the value of every last point. Cody Bias is arguably the prime example in this top split. I can't forget the way the Pro Series, or then Pro Series, now Contender Series, panned out for him in 2019, where when we went to Richmond, the 3rd race of that season, he had the dominant car. Well, didn't even have anybody close to him in terms of pace, but we got one yellow, which led to a rash of them. He came in on that first yellow to try and get fresh tires to make a run towards the back. Eventually got caught up in the soup and the mess in the middle of the field, wrecked, finished about 22nd or 23rd when he probably should have had a top 5, arguably a race-winning car, and that difference in points alone kept him out of the Coke Series last season, and he's yet to make it back since. So you know Cody Bias has the fire to try and get back into this, only because, Jocelyn, he knows how close he's been to it, how good he is, and I would think if I'm Bias, I feel like I still probably belong in the Coke Series and never should have fallen out anyway if not for the bad luck.
He's one of those names that when you think of the Coke Series, especially a couple of years ago, you think of Cody Bias, and you think of the team that he's running at right now in the 27, and that Duval-created Toyota Tundra looks great out there. Dives to the inside, is going to make the pass happen on the 42. Parker Retzlaff slides up the racetrack to cover the spot, and he had it by about a truck length there as they work their way out of turn 2. So that will put Cody Bias further up the field into P7, as there goes Jordan Worth now to the inside. He is unfortunately further down the order in 20th compared to the cars in front of him, down 1 lap. So he'll have to fight his way back to the lead lap. But Cody Bias now going to sit in 7th ahead of Parker Retzlaff. And Cody Bias at the moment really having a well-endowed race right now as he tries to work his way up further into the top 10 and hopefully trying to grab that top 5.
Bias with a solid run. Other driver, and one that we haven't talked about much, but somebody who really has had the solid run that you look for at Darlington. How about Santiago Tires in the number 10 machine, the Stem Sim X Chevy Silverado? Santi started in 25th and has worked his way up into the 10th position. That's tops amongst all trucks in this field. No one's gained more spots than Santiago Tires, although he's going to have a little bit of trouble and traffic there alongside him to the the Logitech Altus Esports trucks trying to make their way around Tierz. I think they've got a little bit fresher rubber than he does, but solid work for Santi to get up into the top 10. And it's been a similar story with Jordan Worth, now that you mention it, Josh Lee. The problem for Jordan is that he started so deep in this field. He was the last truck on the grid in 33rd, and he's gained 11 spots, which certainly isn't a bad return, but 22nd isn't really going to move the needle all that much in the points department. You need a little bit more, and it underscores the importance of qualifying, I think, here more so than a lot of other places. It really does mean a lot at Darlington to start well.
It really does mean a lot here at Darlington, and you can see also the damage to the back end on that spoiler also going to be inhibiting what Jordan Worth is able to do in that number 32. But now on the back bumper of Parker Retzlaff, it is Jeremy Allen trying to grab that spot in the Virginia Tech number 2, the 27 in Sim, as they work their way out of turn 2 and all the way down to the inside. That is going to be the 96 to the inside, trying to grab more spots. They work their way through turns 3 and 4.
That's the lap machine of Boyd Hogan as Jeremy Allen tries to climb, I guess, hokey higher up the leaderboard. There we go. There's the worst one of the night. I don't know if it gets worse than that. While we also say a big thank you to Italian Waffle Mix for subscribing to the Podium Esports Twitch channel for the 12th month in a row. A year's worth of subscriptions from them, and a big thank you for all their support of all that we do. Is all of a sudden we are in the final 20 laps of this race. Evan Pacheco, and still no one's really had anything for Donovan Strauss. His lead is up to 5.6 seconds over Tucker Minter.
Yeah, it's just been that consistency that has worked in favor of Donovan Strauss. And again, on that last cycle of green flag service, he was one of the fastest drivers on pit road. So only adding to his time. We really didn't see anybody up front go for, a big undercut. Nobody swung for the fences. Everybody stayed pretty consistent on where they were, and 5.6 seconds, the biggest race lead we have seen thus far this evening. Minter ends up back into P2. Burrows has been third for the longest time after starting from pole, and I think the long green flag run has benefited drivers like a Mercurio, like a Bias, who have been able to sneak up to P6 and 7. But, I mean, it has been the Donovan Strauss show so far tonight at Darlington. And this time by, a magic number going to be 18. 18 laps to go. As taking a look once more, the battle for 8 and 9. Allen closing in on Retzlaff, just waiting for an opportunity to make the move.
Waiting, hoping maybe there'll be something there as Retzlaff and Allen continue to fight. We'll keep an eye on this battle, and I will also note that for PAW_dog who likes his bologna burgers, if you like bologna burgers, real life plug here, if you happen to be in the central part of North Carolina and or Southern Virginia, maybe northern South Carolina if you like, place that has good bologna burgers, Ace Speedway, which is where the Solid Rock Carriers Cars Tour is going to be tomorrow night for the race at Ace 125. That race, of course, for those keeping score, was the race that inadvertently launched Josh Berry's NASCAR Advanced Auto Parts Weekly Series title campaign a year ago. He got into it with Bobby McCarty over in turn 4, ended up getting a one-race holiday from the officials, and it was at that point that Josh decided that he was going to shift his priorities and shuffle from the Car Store title to try and make it to the Weekly Series title, which he was able to accomplish, and that's also in part how he got the ride in the Xfinity Series with JR Motorsports this year. So there's a, I guess, from small beginnings type story. As Allen, we saw, made a little bit of contact there with Retzlaff about half lap ago and lost some ground, and so Retzlaff still ahead there and still has Jeremy Allen just sitting there, but a little bit further back. He's split up by some of these Logitech Altus Esports trucks that are running that alternate strategy and have already made their final pit stops of the evening, Josh Lee.
And they're trying to work right now, and Retzlaff hit the wall coming off of turn number 2 that you can see from that onboard. You can see the sparks starting to fly as Retzlaff runs the outside line, looking to the inside. Still is Jeremy Allen as he sits further back. Those Logitech Altus Esports drivers, unfortunately, one lap down. Not the best day for Logitech Altus Esports. We saw all of them running up front 2 weeks ago at Talladega, but not the best day for them here at Darlington as they sit further back in the field tonight, as the leader remains Donovan Strauss in the 51. And I think we can all agree, James Pike, a dominant day from Donovan Strauss, and he is going to continue to work up front. Tucker Minter second, Anthony Burrows, Justin Bolton, Dylan Alt finds himself now in the top 5 with Mercurio, Bias, Retzlaff, Allen, and Tires rounding out your top 10 as we work our way to 14 laps to go.
It's a complete opposite story of what we had last week, where I think, just off my rough memory, there were maybe 2 or 3 trucks that started in the top 10 that finished there. You look at the group here, the trucks that are first, second, third, and fourth all started in the top 5. And the only one that's fallen out of that group, Brandon McKissick, who started second and currently is 12th. And then the ones that are in the top 10 all started no worse than 12th, save for Santiago Tires, we've already talked about, which I think underscores just how good his run has been tonight. He continues to climb through this field, and all of a sudden has got some company here. Tires not too far back of Retzlaff, actually, and maybe only about 9 or 10 truck lengths, with the one Logitech G Altus Esports truck of Braden Boulos just sitting in the middle of that battle and splitting it up. So we'll see whether or not Santi has the ability to run down Parker in the last handful of laps or so. But other than that, really not too many battles to talk about, save for Blake Neer and Seth the Merchant. That's another really good one in 13th and 14th, where Neer is all over the rear bumper of the number, I believe, 14 machine.
What's noteworthy as well, you know, look at some of the other drivers who have got big gains tonight, right? A Michael Cozy Jr. plus 14, a Jordan Worth with a plus 13. Those are big pickups, but those are drivers who didn't qualify. So take a look at, you know, started 32nd, so he's way up, but it's only to 18th. Right? Still in the back half of the field. So for somebody like a Santiago Tires, who obviously didn't quite get what they wanted in qualifying and was, you know, a whole 0.4 of a second off of the very top position, very different to Cozy and to Worth is the fact that Tires has had to do this against much faster trucks. So he stands to gain a lot more by being plus 15 and taking that step from the 20s to the 10s instead of the 30s to the 20s. So it's a big step in the right direction for Tires. It may not hold, though, because here comes Drew Fernandes down at the bottom, and we'll go side by side for 10th. The 8 car can't make the inside work. He's got less than 10 more times around to do it, though, if he wants to steal that spot away.
So a little bit of work there. Fernandes wants to try and get around Tires. A good battle that's come through the mix, and those two on pretty even tire strategy as well. Fernandes has got 4 lap fresher tires than Tires does, and maybe that makes the difference in the end. I can also say here, just looking at chat, I will back up everybody that says that Ace and South Boston Speedway have amazing bologna burgers. Grilled onions, caramelized onions, and cheese on either. Definitely going to be a win. Now, earlier on the broadcast, we told you that we've got a special event that we very quickly thrown together, the Next Gen Cars at Richmond Raceway. We now can tell you that if you head to the link in chat, McConeySetupShop.com/event-signups, you can register for free to get in on a Podium Esports broadcast tomorrow night, 9:30 p.m. Eastern, from Richmond Raceway. It'll be the first major show from Richmond in the Next Gen Cars, and you'll be able to put a feather in your cap as the first ever winner of a big-time show at Richmond in those machines, the same way Michael Frisch won the first big-time race featuring the 1987 stock cars at North Wilkesboro Speedway when he won the First in Flight 400 back in June of last year. So head on over to McConeySetupShop.com/event-signups for more. Good side-by-side battle between Fernandes and Tires. This is for 10th and 11th. We'll see if we can get there as there's contact between the two off of turn 2, and Tires just about walled it as they go door to door down the backstretch, and Brandon McKissick is in the mix too.
They continue to race side by side as they work their way now off of turn 4. Fernandes up the inside, the outside line being held at the moment as everybody goes single file now, roaring back through turn 1 and 2. Drew Freenar's trying to hold on to his top 10, but he has an entire host of cars behind him. Santiago Tires trying to get himself back in the top 10. Brandon McKissick trying to get up to the top 10 once again. He started in second place, fell all the way back through the field, looking to work his way for at least a top 10 finish tonight. And then you have to look all the way back to Blake Neer, a solid 5 seconds behind this group for the next car on the lead lap that they are fighting. So Drew Freitas leads the field back into turn 1, and this group continues to race for the top 10.
Wait, Josh, did you say side by side there?
I think I did just say side by side there. They're not side by side, they're single file.
No. You can't do that because we have the master of the side by side in here. Evan, it's time for you to speak up, is it not?
Well, let's get a little bit of a side-by-side battle, and then we can do it. So maybe a little bit of encouragement for these drivers to get a bit of a late race fight in here. Do the teammates do it?
Oh, Blake Neer, Casey Tucker off turn 4 side by side.
As are McKissick and Tires.
That's the one I'm looking at. It's Tires up at the outside, and it's going to be McKissick on the bottom, side by side in turn number 2. And it's going to be the outside. Oh, they're going to touch and just about wrecking it at lap 137. Look out. McKissick held on. More side by side as it's Derek Bordeaux on the bottom. There's your late race excitement.
We have broken the fourth wall once again, ladies and gentlemen. You're welcome.
Carson Hocevar around turn 4, trying to save it on the bottom of the racetrack. He is around, and he's fully around now. Almost stopped, keeps it going. Not exactly a save, but not exactly fully around. We stay green now with 2 laps to go.
We almost have our biggest exciting moments at the end of this race because Hocevar nearly looped it sideways and almost forced a green-white checker, which is about the last thing Donovan Strauss would have wanted to see, James.
Yeah, that was really incredible work there by Carson Hocevar. He just got into, I think it was the 57, just drove up into him there, but you're absolutely right. That caution for Donovan Strauss would have been heartbreaking. That would have absolutely thrown all of that work down the drain and thrown the entire race for a loop. But Tucker Minter sits in second, Anthony Burrows in third, but 7.5 seconds back to second place. Another 9 seconds in total back from the leader is Anthony Burrows. Really incredible job here to pull away. Donovan Strauss has done.
Beautiful work for Donovan Strauss, who has one more corner left to go, and it is the number 51 machine. Donovan Strauss running the Elliott Sadler throwback, gets the victory and gets his first win in the eNASCAR Road to Pro Qualifying iRacing Series in 2021 for Elliott Sadler Esports. It's Donovan Strauss going to victory lane at the Lady in Black.
Mistake-free, and that is the name of the game when you have a race that goes caution-free. Several drivers tried their best to give us some late race excitement. Green flag stayed out, and Donovan Strauss, aided by a good qualifying effort, started up inside of the top 5 in 3rd position. And again, was perfect on the pit cycle. I think that is going to be the key that he looks back on. Didn't give those drivers an opportunity to come back on him. And then on the green flag runs, James pulled away Joe Martin to victory of 7.4 seconds.
One of the largest margins of victory that we have seen all season long in the top split of the eNASCAR Road to Pro Qualifying iRacing Series, or even the second split for that matter, which if you didn't get the chance, you can catch it tonight on STN_Racing. Our friend Zach Johnson and company bringing the second split to you over there, and you can go watch the replay if you want after we're done here in just a few moments. But Donovan Strauss with a beautiful run to get it done. 7.5 seconds almost up for Tucker Minter at the end of the night. Anthony Burrows brings the Tony Stewart-inspired Walter Mobile home in 3rd. Season's best finish for Justin Bolton as well. He came home 4th. 5th was Dylan Albright Mercurio with a good finish in 6th. 7th went to Cody Bias. Jeremy Allen finished in the 8th position. 9th went to Parker Retzlaff, and Drew Freenage was able to claim that last spot in the top 10 over Santiago Tires.
Yeah, Tires therefore ends up at 11th when this one is said and done, just ahead of Brandon McKissick in P12. Then you have Casey Tucker, Seth the Merchant, and Blake Neer, the final drivers to finish on the lead lap. That'll be through P15. Then it's Landon Huffman, 1 lap down in 16th, trailed by Michael Cozy Jr. in 17th. Jordy Lopez Jr. with the P18 tonight. Will Cooley ends up 19th, and Jordan Worth gains for P20.
Everybody else down from here off of the lead lap, starting with Matt Danson in 21st, Justin Levine in 22nd, Braden Boulos 23rd, Larry Pace 24th, Carson Osavar with the late race save there ends up in 25th, Briar LaPrade, Adam Gilliland, Derek Bordeaux, Boyd Hogan, and Brad Mahar round out your top 30. Final 3 cars on the track. An unfortunate end of the day for Colin Keister, winner from Richmond Raceway, finishes in 31st. Justin Reed and Devin Curl also having equally bad days here at Darlington. That's your full race results, so we send it back to James Pike.
Time to bring in our race winner for the first time in 2021, Donovan Strauss. This place clicked from the get-go. You nailed it down. So what was the testing process like, and what did you do over the course of the last weeks to prepare for this race that made you so quick this evening?
Honestly, after Talladega, I was full set on going into this race and trying to win it because I needed the points so bad, and all the work I put in, it paid off because we had a insane piece tonight, and I cannot thank everybody at ESC and Lowline and everyone. I'm just so happy I finally won one of these. I've been trying for a year, and I'm just happy I finally got one.
I think, and you can hear it in your response, but there's definitely more that we can talk about there, because this has been a process. And although you are one of the younger competitors in this field, you gained a ton of experience last year running in this series and then the Contender Series. So to come back and to finally notch that first win and get that checked off the list, what's that mean to you? What does that do for your psyche going through the rest of the season?
Yeah, last year it was all about learning, to be honest, because I was still relatively new, and I ended up getting into the Pro Series. So, and it was a struggle. It was a rough time, and I came back this year wanting to, instead of just learn, I was wanting to use that experience and form and win races and get back into the Contender Series. And this is just the beginning. I think this night, man, it means a lot to me. I don't even know what to say.
It puts you back into the top 70 in points, and I think more importantly, this has to be a little bit sweeter just because of the colors that you ran on your truck tonight, honoring the boss man, to be able to get it done for him with the one-main scheme. What's that mean to you?
Yeah, to get a win in this truck in Elliott's 2011 one-main financial car, that was my first year watching the sport, so I remember that scheme like crazy. So to get a win in his truck, it's insanely nice, to say the least.
Charlotte coming up in 2 weeks. How do you take the momentum you built up here and bring it there?
Just keep doing what we're doing. We're performing really good. We had 4 of us in the top 10 tonight. So we just got to keep preparing like we are, and the results will come, and I know they will. So we just got to keep doing what we're doing.
Back inside the cut line, most importantly, and back in the top 70 after tonight with his victory. Donovan Strauss, congratulations on your win in the top split of the eNASCAR Road to Pro qualifying iRacing series from all of us at Podium Esports, and we'll see you in 2 weeks' time for the Queen City.
Thank you, guys.
Donovan Strauss, P1 this evening. P2 went to Tucker Minter, a season's best finish for him, and he is with Evan Pasoko.
So we're down trackside with the driver of the number 12 machine, Tucker Minter. Tucker, congratulations on a good finish here tonight from Darlington. You guys started in the number 4 spot, but you picked up positions early, threatened for the race lead for a little bit there, and are able to come home after a caution-free 140-lap race in position number 2. How was it for you?
Yeah, I had a really great race. I was really happy that the work paid off with the setup to get second, because I spent a lot of time on it the last couple of days after that build. Didn't think I had anything for Donnie. I was really hoping for the first 20 laps that I could get by Burrows and maybe the clean air would help me, but Donnie just kept getting runs, and I was like, I don't really need to put myself in a bad position while running the top 5 round, lap 30, so I just let him have it. Then he went down and caught Burrows, but after that I feel like I just executed really well, and it was a good race at the end.
Second top 5 of the year, and as James mentioned, your highest finish thus far of this eNASCAR Road to Pro qualifying iRacing series. You entered tonight kind of right in the sweet spot, mid-30s, well within the top 70 cutoff, but how big is this P2 finish for you in the top split, giving you that much more cushion as we head deeper and deeper into this opening round?
Yeah, it makes me feel really good. I was sweating it after I got wrecked out at Richmond, and I was still in a pretty good spot with 200 points, but to get second here extend that points cushion just makes me feel a lot better going to Charlotte and Martinsville and with other tracks that are left.
Yeah, 3 races left: Charlotte, Martinsville, and Dover. Let's focus on our trip to NASCAR's backyard in 2 weeks' time. Back to an intermediate racetrack for 167 laps there. What is the key for you playing from an advantage in these final 3 races? Do you change how you drive at all to protect points, or is the best way to stay consistent just to treat it as business as usual?
I don't think you can really take a step back and slack off. You just have to keep your head down, especially since we're going to be going into another round after this. I think it's good to take a little bit of a break, maybe not put as many hours into testing, but just make sure you put the same amount of effort in and treat the races seriously.
As well, I think it's pretty much a no doubt, or at least from our booth consensus, that you get the Paint Scheme of the Race award. So congrats on that one. But before we let you jet out of here, anybody want to say hi to?
Yeah, I appreciate that, Evan. On your broadcast, I've been eyeing that Gravedigger door you have sitting in the background.
We showed it off on stream tonight when we were talking about your truck. So
yeah, I just got a small piece of one of the 30th anniversary trucks from 2012 that they sold. The Digger's Dungeon sold on Facebook last year. I'm hoping they have another auction soon. I can pick up another piece, but I'd just like to thank everyone over at Nexus Esports, my family, my cousin Stuart, and everyone that supports me on iRacing.
Well, I'll tell you what, I got a buddy of mine who drives one of the Gravedigger trucks, Tyrell Menninga, for some of the arena stuff in Monster Jam. And when you posted the scheme on Twitter the other day, I sent it to him. So you've got his official stamp of approval. So I appreciate you sticking with us. And Jet and Tucker, again, congratulations on the finish. And we'll catch up with you soon.
Thanks, Evan.
P2 finisher tonight from the Darlington Raceway, James.
Pretty wild to think that an empire out of just outside of Kill Devil Hills, North Carolina, managed to explode in that. If we're going to be technical, it's Poplar Branch, which is where the Digger Dungeon is. But wild to think that something so small at the beginning could take flight and be so big. And the wording, I would argue, appropriate, since Kill Devil Hills not terribly far away from Kitty Hawk, where the Wright brothers flew the very first airplane back in the early 1900s. Third place this evening was Anthony Burrows, running the 2005 Tony Stewart Throwback. He is with Josh Lee.
And another great looking throwback scheme for Anthony Burrows. He kept the Walter Mobile going as just different colors on the truck tonight. But a great day for you, Anthony. You started on the pole, fell back a little bit, but rallied back for a third place finish. How was that race from inside the car?
I love this track, man. It was a lot of fun. I tried saving a little bit that first run, and I saw how quick Donnie was catching me, and he was hounding me so hard, and I let him go, and kind of rode in second, third, fourth the rest of the race, and ended up third at the end there. I'm a little speechless after that, but yeah, glad to have a good run this season.
You came into tonight 54th in the points, and you're inside that cutoff, but obviously not exactly where you would want to be here, because you're only a little bit above that cut line of the top 70. Are you worried about that cut line at this stage, or are you just trying to put together single race by single race and hopefully staying up above that top 70?
Definitely still a little worried because I think I got 33rd at Atlanta, so hopefully I can keep that as my drop race. It's hard to do much worse than that, but don't really have a bad race or any of that to lean back on. So if I can just finish top 10 each of the last 3 races in this, I think I'll be just fine. Just got to keep the speed up.
Well, with an average start of 17th and an average finish of 16th, you blew both of those out of the water tonight. A great run for you in the 62. Anybody else you would like to thank here on Podium Esports?
Big shout out to everyone at Nexus for all the hard work, especially Tucker. I know he put in a ton of hours this week. Big shout out to you guys for putting on the broadcast. Y'all do a fantastic job with it, and big shout out to everyone watching tonight.
Well, thank you very much for joining us up here in the booth. Anthony Burrows, third place finish here from the Darlington Raceway. James Pike, a great day for a lot of drivers, especially those top 3. I would say an unexpected top 3 when we came into tonight.
And it's a top three who I think you look at the way this panned out, and these were three drivers that really did need the points, Evan. It was something that they all referenced in their interviews. This was not a group that found themselves in a Colin Keister, Derek Bordeaux-esque position. And of note, speaking of Colin Keister, a 31st place for him. So a bit of a flip in the way things were tonight compared to how they've been the first few races, where drivers like Keister struggle to have good runs. Derek Bordeaux wasn't great either. He was 28th. And it's some of the folks who have been struggling to put together some solid finishes, making their names heard on this evening.
And I think that if you get a race win or a top 5 anywhere, you're going to take it, right? Especially in a series like this. But I think it means that much more, and it builds that much more confidence in these drivers who get these critical finishes when you do it in a race like this. Caution-free, no excuses, right? You controlled your destiny tonight. You executed on qualifying. You executed on the pit strategy. If it did not pan out, most likely your fault. You can't fall back on an excuse of, oh, the caution fell against us or this and that, right? These drivers had every opportunity tonight to right the ship, and for many of them, they did. And I think you never underestimate what that confidence can do, right? It was the point that I mentioned right off at the top. Second half of this opening round, you need to keep the ball rolling. And to the point they're talking post-race, this with being 2 rounds, it's not just 3 more races after this and we're done. You do need to make sure that momentum continues a little bit. It's kind of like at the end of the regular season, right? With the NASCAR Cup Series, there is an end goal, but then that next step is more important. So I think big things, as you mentioned, specifically from our top 3 finishers tonight, to get themselves into a better standing as we head off to an intermediate track in Charlotte in a couple of weeks.
And an intermediate track, more importantly, though, as we look at the schedule, Josh Lee, it's the last intermediate track in this round. So for drivers who had success at Las Vegas, who had success at Atlanta, this is the last chance they're going to have to be able to knock down points at a similar place, because the other 2 places that we go to before we wrap up this first round, Martinsville and Dover, very, very different. Honestly, more like Darlington than they are Charlotte. So you look at somebody like a Donovan Strauss, and Tucker Minter, and Anthony Burrows, it makes you wonder if we may see them make a late round charge, just because the tracks might be a little bit more to their liking than what we'll see at Charlotte next week.
When we talk about unique tracks, we're going to be talking about unique tracks the entire season. We finish up round 1 at Dover on June 17th, and then we turn around July 8th. We're going to Knoxville Raceway to start round 2. We're going to the dirt to start the second round of this campaign. Then we head back to intermediates at Homestead, the only road course on the schedule, Watkins Glen International. Rockingham, a complete curveball. That's not even on any NASCAR schedule anymore, but we're going to go to it here in the Road to Pro qualifying iRacing series. And we finish out with 2 short tracks, Bristol and Phoenix. Before that is Texas. So this schedule is so unique, and it's much like a lot of these drivers are going to see when they make their way to the Contender Series, when they make their way to the Coke Series. The schedules are so unique. They follow the real NASCAR schedules a little bit, but they still allow for a little bit of uniqueness in there that real life NASCAR doesn't really get to. So these drivers need to be versed in a wide range of track types and styles, and we're going to see it as we move through this campaign and eventually have the top 20 that'll move on to the Contender Series at the end of September.
Now, Jeff, let's focus in on our next race, Charlotte Motor Speedway, before we start looking towards the end of that first round. For some of these places on the calendar, like in Knoxville, like in Rockingham, where you may not have seen the track, you may not have touched it with the truck before, nobody can say that about Charlotte. It's one of the most popular tracks in all of iRacing. It's one of the tracks that everyone can start on the oval side. You run the rookie street stocks in Charlotte, and one where everybody has experience in some way, shape, or form. It's one of the most popular ovals in the most popular class of oval racing on the surface. So given that pretty much everybody has experience there in some way, shape, or form, what do you do with regards to practice, to testing, to setup, to strategy to separate yourself and make yourself a contender?
You find something that no one else has. You got to find that tiny little bit of extra speed, because like you said, everyone's turned laps at Charlotte. I believe it's still free with iRacing because you run the rookie street stocks there. And overall, it's a pretty generic track. There's nothing too crazy about it. It's the D-shaped oval. But what that does, though, is if there's no real advantage there for anyone because everyone's so familiar with it, you have to find something. You've got to find something in the setup that just works. You have to get that thing dialed in perfectly. You've got to get yourself trained so that you can turn 100, 200, 1,000, 10,000 laps there without making a mistake, because any sort of tiny mistake you make is going to be very, very bad. It will compound exponentially, especially when everyone else is going to be right on top of you because they're so familiar with the track as well.
And margins are going to be fractional. And fractional in the hundredths and the thousand cents, probably not even the tenths, at least to start off, because the package makes for such close racing in the mile and a half. So it's very similar to what you see with the current Class A package in the, I guess now current gen NASCAR Cup Series cars. So we'll keep an eye on that too. It should be wild restarts, I think, when we get to Charlotte. Justin Prince, any final thoughts from what you've seen this evening?
An interesting race overall, and for many of the drivers, including some of the usual ones who are known to be more vocal or more on the playful side, were dialed in tonight. That's how difficult this race was tonight. Drivers like Jordan Wolf were laser focused on the task at hand to make sure they can get around the racetrack on their viewpoints, and most of the drivers were trying to stay calm, cool, and collected on the radio tonight and positive with how this race could fare out tonight. Overall, it was an interesting race overall with how things fared out in terms of the strategy as well as with the speed. But overall, it shows the versatility of many of these organizations to be able to turn around quickly and be able to build a setup and put themselves into a proper track positioning and truck positioning in the span of a couple days after some of the updates this week. So they were able to get around that quick turnaround time, and we've seen the success there. Now they have the opportunity to have a lot of time at Charlotte Motor Speedway for the next couple weeks to be able to focus on there, to be able to build their setups. You know that many of these teams have had to, at the very least, start that preparation a couple weeks ago in some cases to be able to build their bases. For the next couple weeks, they're going to be focused on turning thousands of laps to make sure they're ready to go.
Organizations. Key word that you said there, I think, when you look at it. You heard Donovan say it in his interview that it was, I think, 3 or 4 of the top 10 drivers were Elliott Sadler esports drivers. Organizations really do drive this at the beginning and the end of every race, whether or not it's ESC or Nexus or Logitech Altus Esports. Those big teams have come to play, and there's a reason why you hear their names week in and week out. We'll see if it's the same when we head to NASCAR's backyard. My own backyard is a native North Carolinian. Charlotte Motor Speedway going to be the place where we head in 2 weeks' time. But before some events that we can tell you about in the world of Podium Esports and iRacing over the course of the next few weeks. It's going to be Darlington one more time Saturday night with the MSRI Premier Series at 8 p.m. Eastern on twitch.tv/Podium2, as well as Podium's Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter pages. You've got the MPI Cup Series from Chicagoland on the Podium Esports Twitch channel Sunday night, 9:15. Monday Night Racing with the Pro 2 Trunks at Watkins Glen, May 10th, 8 p.m. Eastern. The Podium 2 Twitch channel, as well as the Podium YouTube, Facebook, Twitter combo per usual. A 3-pack on Wednesday night, next Wednesday night, May 12th. PCA Sim Racing with the Porsche 911 GT3 Cup car at Long Beach. The Dirt Sprint Car Championship Series featuring the Wing Sprint cars at the dirt track at Charlotte. And then the EPM Omega Cup Summer Bowl for the E-Racing Association at Circuit of the Americas. All across the platform, whether or not it's PCA Sim Racing's YouTube channel, Podium's Twitch, or iRacing's Twitch. And then we're back on air with the eNASCAR Road to Pro qualifying iRacing series from Charlotte. Thursday, May 20th, 9 p.m. Eastern, the Podium Esports Twitch channel. And oh, by the way, for those who missed it, we've got one more big event for you. Tomorrow night, 9:30 p.m. Eastern Time, we're going Next Gen Racing from Richmond Raceway. Head to McConeySetupShop.com/event-setups to sign up and be a part of that race while the broadcast here on the Podium Twitch channel, 9:30 p.m. Eastern tomorrow night. Time to close out our coverage from the Lady in Black and the track Too Tough to Tame. So for everybody at Podium Esports, Gary Sexton, Cisco Scaramuza, John Theodore, for Tyler Hudson at iRacing for organizing the eNASCAR Road to Pro qualifying iRacing series, and for our team on the broadcast tonight, Evan Pasoko, Josh Lee, Jeff McConey, Justin Prince, Ryan Bauer, and our camera designer, Dougie Beard. I am James Black, the voice of Podium Esports. Thank you so much for watching our coverage of the eNASCAR Road to Pro qualifying series James from Darlington, and we look forward to seeing you in 2 weeks' time from America's home for racing, Charlotte Motor Speedway. Until then, good night.